This is the Bringing Business to Retail podcast with today's guest, Katie Hunt from Tradeshow Bootcamp.
Welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast on SelenaKnight.com. Stay ahead of the competition by opening your doors to business experts so you can learn, grow, and be inspired. Passionate about bringing business strategies to independent retailers, please welcome your host, Selena Knight.
Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. I'm Selena Knight, your host and retail strategist, and I'm here to help you learn, grow, and be inspired. Now, as I record this, it is a Monday afternoon, the sun is shining, my dog Cav and I have just gotten back from the aged care facility where we volunteer in the therapy dog program. We go and visit the old people and they get to pat Cav and ask me over and over again how old he is and was he a race dog? It's a question that I get asked probably about 100 times while I'm there. Cav loves it. I love it. The residents at the facility love it. So it is a win-win-win all the way round. And you know what? It's actually quite nice to be forced to step away from the computer because for the last 2 weeks, I have done a lot of sitting in front of the computer. I'm heading off to the Traffic and Conversion Conference over in San Diego in just over a week's time. So I am desperately prepping everything to get it ready to go live. And so when I get there, my awesome marketing manager, Monica, and I can sit down for the weekend. We can do a whole bunch of business planning. And then on the Monday, we are off to Traffic and Conversion. Are you going to be there? Are you heading off to San Diego to the Digital Marketer Conference? If you are, send me a message. Send me a Facebook message or an Instagram message or hit reply to one of my emails. And if we have enough people who are in the area, then we might just organize a little bit of a meetup. I think that would be fantastic to meet retailers from around the world and talk all things digital marketing. So if you are heading over there, make sure you get in contact with me and we can see if we can organize a meetup. Now, some of that preparation that I've been doing has been working on a brand new training for you. And this training is all about Facebook marketing, specifically why your Facebook marketing isn't working, why your ads are falling flat, and what you can do to change them around to be profitable product sales ads. Now, this is going to be a free online training, and I'm just about to organize the date. So if you're listening to this and you know that this is something that you need help with, you're already using Facebook ads, and they're just not converting for you, they're not turning into sales, then this free training will be going live and you can register for it at SelenaKnight.com/marketing. That's SelenaKnight.com/marketing. And you can grab your spot in the live online training. So I'll be going through the 3 main reasons that your Facebook ads aren't working and what you need to do to solve those problems and turn them into high-performing product ads. Because let's be honest, nobody can afford to be spending marketing money on advertising and marketing that just isn't converting to sales. And so many people, in fact, Katie and I talk about this on the show today, so many people write off really bad marketing as brand awareness. And I say that with air quotes because it's a way to make it feel like it is okay to be spending money on marketing that isn't working. But as I say to all of my clients, you aren't Nike. You can't afford a brand awareness campaign. You need a profitable sales campaign. So if that's something that you need help with, Facebook ads just aren't working for you, head over to SelenaKnight.com/marketing and you can grab your spot on the live training. You can even bring your questions and hang around for the live Q&A where I'll be answering all of your Facebook marketing questions. Now, before we jump into today's episode, something that I haven't done for ages is read a review. And this is one of the ways that you can support the podcast. If you love listening to the podcast, it would be fantastic if you could just hit the button on your phone in the show notes that says leave a review and just leave me a quick review. And how does this help? Because iTunes is just like every other platform. it has an algorithm. And if you are leaving reviews, it helps me show up higher in the podcast list. So today's review is from Foxtrot12345. And Foxtrot12345 says, I've just discovered this podcast and I've binge listened. I've never worked in retail and started my own e-commerce biz last year. Being bootstrapped, I can't afford strategists or consultants at this point in time, so listening to this podcast has been total gold. Thank you so much, Foxtrot12345. And if you would love to support the podcast, you can do so by clicking the link and just leaving us a quick review, and you just might get a shout out on the show. Now, on to today's episode with special guest Katie Hunt from Tradeshow Bootcamp. Now, if you've ever thought of doing a trade show, then this is the podcast that you just have to listen to. Katie is a wealth of information. And just some of the things that we talk about are the biggest mistakes that people make when it comes to exhibiting at a trade show, and how to value your time when you are pricing your products. This one we talked a lot about because so many people undervalue their products, especially if they're handmade. We also talk about the preparations that you need to put in place before you go to the trade show. And I share a couple of little secrets that my clients have used to get the most out of their trade show booths. We look at sharing a booth, whether it's worthwhile, and if you do decide to go ahead, what can you do to make sure that you get the most out of your share of the exhibiting booth? And also, Katie shares her tips on creating a strategy to organize trade shows, to organize what's going to happen before, during, and after the trade shows so that you don't end up with a brand awareness campaign. You end up with some great sales at the end of your show. So let's jump into today's episode with Katie Hunt from Tradeshow Bootcamp. Before we jump into today's episode, I just want to do a great big shout out to the patrons of the show. Now, this is something that we implemented in episode 100, which is where my daughter Alana, who's 8, interviewed me and got a little bit obsessed with our dog. It's very funny. If you need a pick-me-up, go and listen to an 8-year-old get interviewed. But this show stays proudly independent, just like your retail store, because of people like you who pledge their support to keep it going. Now, putting this show together is not easy and it costs a lot of money. You know this. This is how business works, right? So I'm out there putting anywhere between 5 and 8 pieces of business strategy advice in your pocket or in your earbuds every single month, and you can pledge your support to keep the show alive. So I would love it if you would become a patron of the show. Simply head on over to selenaknight.com/patron and you can find the information there. Click the big button on the show notes if you would like to pledge your support, and jump into today's episode. Hey there, and welcome to this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. Today we have Katie Hunt, and Katie is the founder of Tradeshow Bootcamp, host of the Proof to Product podcast. She's a business strategist and a mentor to creative entrepreneurs. Best of all, in 2009, Katie launched her wholesale line for Kelp Designs, and she was selling into retail stores all around America right up until 2016, when she decided to stop her manufacturing and focus all of her time and energy into her Trade Show Bootcamp community. So I'm really excited to have Katie on the show to talk all about getting ready for trade shows, especially when you're a retailer. So welcome to the show, Katie.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
We have had so much fun before we even got onto this episode. So I hope that I get all of the questions in before we get to the end of the podcast. Now, tell us a little bit about how you ended up in retail. Before we get onto the trade show stuff, tell us a bit about Kelp Designs. How did you start it? What were you making? What was your why?
Sure. So in 2008, I started Kelp Designs, which was a stationery brand, and it's a common story in our industry, but I was getting married and I just loved paper. I was working in a very corporate job in a law firm, and I thought, gosh, I need a creative outlet. We're getting married. I started playing with patterns and fonts and made our own wedding invitations. And then I also made some personalized stationery note cards for my bridesmaids. And again, it was just more for my own personal use and for fun. But as these things go, friends and family started asking me to design wedding invitations for them and personalized note cards and things like that. So I ended up creating a Etsy shop and things started selling. And from there, my mom said to me, well, if you're going to do this and you're really going to make a business out of it, have you thought about wholesaling and have you thought about going to the National Stationery Show?
Go, Mom.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, she's very much an entrepreneur. So if you're gonna do something, you might as well go big, right? But yeah. So then that was October 2008 when I started, and I expanded that product line a little bit and into things like book plates and greeting cards and some more off-the-shelf type products that could be sold in stores because the personalized stuff it's a little bit trickier to sell through stores. And yeah, I launched at the National Stationery Show, the wholesale side of my business in 2009.
And it went upwards from there.
It did, and it was a lot of fun. It was a side hustle for me for a long time as we were growing our family, and I needed the stability of my day job. And I was also figuring out, what types of products I wanted to make. What did I want my product line to really exude? What kind of aesthetic did I want to focus on? But yeah, my why was I enjoyed, making people happy, and I enjoyed the idea of connecting others, and the whole idea of sending greeting cards was something I was very passionate about. My husband and I actually sent letters to each other as we were dating. He was in Hawaii and I was in Santa Barbara. And email was not what it is today.
Remember back then?
I know, right? We had Hotmail email addresses, but no computers in our dorms and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, we wrote letters, and I really enjoyed the work. And so I did that from 2009. We really expanded in wholesale and things got booming. But I started Tradeshow Bootcamp in 2011 because I was starting to have some questions around shows and expanding and scaling my wholesale line. And I was getting a lot of questions from others in the community and my industry as well as to like how to do these things. You've done this already. Can you show me how? And a lot of the questions were the same. And I turned around to a couple of friends and I said, I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. Let's get everybody on a phone call and share what we know. And, together, if we work together and share our resources, our industry will grow stronger, our companies will grow faster, and we can really do a lot by working together. And so that's what we did. It started as 4 teleconference calls and it has expanded into conferences and courses and coaching and all of those things.
Now we call those webinars.
I know,
Isn't it funny?
I know. Well, it's so funny when I tell people we started with teleconference calls, they're like, what? What are those? And I'm like, yeah, that was the webinars in 2012. But again, that was before there was as much educational content online as there is now. And we had to do a lot of explaining to people what we were doing and how they could learn from us and how logistically it worked. It's so funny how times have changed.
Yeah. And I really feel that the training side of things, it's only been in, say, like the last 3 to 4 years that the online training scene has really boomed. And there's a great side of it that you can get access to information, but then there is also so much garbage out there. And
Yes.
to be honest, I really do feel like when you pay for something, I don't know, maybe it's just me being time poor, but nowadays I'm just like, can you just tell me how much it will cost and give me the stuff I need? I don't want to sift through 45 YouTube channels and 15-minute videos only to get to the end and realize that is not what I was looking for.
Yes, I'm sitting here shaking my head so much. Yes. I think too, it is easy for people that have some knowledge in different areas to create courses or workshops now and consider themselves experts when maybe they're not quite there yet, So I agree with you. It's become such a necessary and such a wonderful thing that we have access to all these different experts and courses and things like that. But I do understand people's curiosity and for, will I get the value out of this? Will there be a return on my investment? And will this benefit me?
Yeah, and I do think that's not that this is even what we're not here to talk about courses, but we go where the conversation goes. But I do find that that's the difference between when you pay for something is you want to get a return on investment versus when you're just sitting there. You can tell when I say this story that I clearly recently was trying to do something and sat through a lot of YouTube videos to try and figure the answer out. And in the end, I just paid someone $30 to fix it. Yeah. But I spent 2.5 hours trying to work it out myself.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's a procrastination tool, though. There's no impetus to try and implement what you've learned. Okay, what I was trying to do was a tech issue, but when when you see these things, when you do free courses, they're kind of like, they're there in the back of your mind. But when you pay, you're like, no, I've forked out some cold hard bucks for this and I need to see some return. I will do the work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree with you.
Okay, so we are here to talk about trade shows, and let's get really clear right from the beginning. When we're talking trade shows, we're talking the kind of trade shows where you as a manufacturer, supplier, creator, go to sell your wares to other retailers. We're not talking about to the end consumer. We're talking you want to get your products into somebody else's store.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, no, I was just thinking before we got on, we had a good chat before we got on, and we said a lot of people just start with the trade show. So let's start with the trade show, and then you can tell us some of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're going to display, appear, show, whatever word you want to use at a trade show.
Sure. So I get a lot of people coming to us saying, I'm ready to do this show. We focus primarily on, American-based shows, particularly the National Stationery Show and New York Now. But we have companies that do Atlanta and Dallas and even Toronto Gift and, just a wide range. But my point is, a lot of people come to us and say, I want to do shows because I want to get my products on the shelves of retail shops near and far. And my first question to them is always, how much product do you have? How many SKUs do you already have done? And the reason I asked that first is because we found over the last 7 years that a lot of people come to us wanting help with merchandising and building a trade show booth, but they don't have the foundation of their product-based business ready to go to a show yet. So I like to take them a step back and focus on their product first and make sure that it's in alignment with their industry standards, that they have enough product that buyers are going to be interested in what they're selling and be able to order enough to meet their minimum opening orders and all that stuff. So product is first. And then the second thing I walk them through, again, before we ever talk about trade shows, are their terms and conditions and their sales strategies. So do they have their catalogs ready? Do they have their minimum opening requirements? Are they sure that their pricing is in line with wholesale standards? All of these things sound kind of boring, but they are very critical to success at a show, and they're very critical to selling wholesale in general. So that's where I start with people typically. And then we head into show details.
And I love that. I bet you the next question after your first question is obviously, you probably hear this, I reckon, 7 out of 10 times, what's a SKU?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Yes, we do.
How many do I need?
Yep. How many do I need? What's a SKU? And then I also hear, but how do I make the SKU? Like, what do I need to include? And I'm, the SKUs can be whatever you want, but keep them short, keep them simple, keep them relevant to what you're selling so that it's very simple and easy for anyone to, pull and order and all that stuff.
Okay, so just quickly give us like this 60-second version, because there are going to be people who are listening who maybe aren't as advanced, who are going, yeah, ladies, you are talking about a SKU. You're saying people ask that question. What is the answer?
What is a SKU? Yeah. A SKU is very simply put an item number. So as you're growing your product line, you want to assign an item number to each of your products. And this is good for 2 reasons. One, internally, as you are, creating your catalog, or you're doing inventory, or you are adding products to your online shop. This is a way for you to track how much of that product you have. So the SKU number is always tied. You'll usually have a name for that product too, if it's a greeting card, I'm in the greeting card world, so birthday balloons or something, happy birthday this, whatever it is. You will probably have a name, but you'll have a number, or the SKU number can be a mix of alphanumeric. So for example, if it was a happy birthday card, I would encourage you to maybe say HB for happy birthday, and then a 3 to 4 digit SKU, depending on how much product you have. Keep it simple, make it relevant to what you're selling. If it's jewelry and you're using a certain stone, maybe the letters at the front are tied to the type of stone and the numbers are just a random order, sequential numbers. So that's the first reason why you'd want a SKU. Externally, when you start working with stores, retail shops, they are going to use your item number when they place orders from you. They're also going to use it in their POS systems, their ordering systems in their shop. And so if they start to run low on inventory in their shop, they can turn around to you and say, hey, we need more of this SKU number. Can you send it with the next order? And so those numbers are tied to each product so that they can order quickly and you can manage your inventory and everything internally within your business.
Because there's nothing worse than getting an order for 25 of the happy birthday cards with blue balloons, and you've got 7 different designs with blue balloons.
Exactly. That's exactly it. Yep.
And the idea behind the SKU is, the HB, happy birthday, without even knowing what the numbers mean, there's some kind of identifier for you. So you go, right, okay, straight away, that's a happy birthday card. So you create these numbers and they're completely different to a barcode.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Absolutely. They're completely different. The barcodes. And I work primarily with small manufacturers, independent manufacturers. They're typically one person shops. Maybe they have a small team. We don't recommend people deal with UPC codes until they absolutely need to, until they start working with, key accounts, larger stores, until a shop asks for them. Don't spend the time and energy and money on that, in my opinion.
No, and it is only the big stores that tend to use it. The smaller stores, their POS system, the POS system will actually generate a unique barcode for your product anyway.
Right.
Okay, so how do you address the concern? And I know that I'm trying to pull some examples from my clients without giving any names away. How do you address the concern when someone says to you, I have this diary that I've created and I want to sell it for $40. And you say, okay, that seems like a fair price. And then you say to them, so how much are you going to wholesale it for? And they say, well, I want to sell it to the retailer for $35.
Yeah.
You can hear
that
your voice
not
drop.
Yeah, exactly. I know. That is not going to work. So when I talk to people about their product, we're not just talking about how much they need to create, but we're really trying to hone in on what are their profit margins? What are their production costs? And when we talk about production costs, that's where you want to dial in on how much does it cost me to produce just one single item?
Including your time.
Yes, all the hard costs of the materials, but absolutely labor. And if you do not have a team of people helping you package and send stuff out, you still want to factor in your time because your time is valuable. And at some point, you may want to bring somebody else on the team. So you want to build a buffer into that production cost so that you do have the ability to hire somebody should you choose to do that down the line. So yes, absolutely include your time in there as well as any hard costs tied to the materials and production of your product.
Now, one of the questions that I get asked all the time is, how do I work out what I should sell my product for? And how do I work out what I should wholesale my product for?
Right. I'm sorry. That and I didn't finish my answer. I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it was my fault. I just forgot to answer it. So yes, thank you for bringing me back on track.
This question 10 times every day.
Okay. So it gets tricky. Once you figure out your production cost, I usually tell people you need to work your numbers from 2 different directions. From the bottom up, which is what we just talked about, figuring out your production cost and knowing exactly what it costs you to create that product. And then you need to work your numbers from top down. And what I mean by that is looking around the market and seeing what other products that are very similar to yours in terms of size and style and price point that you want to be at and all that, what are they selling for? And that your wholesale price, well, your retail price, let's focus on that, is going to be somewhere in between those two things because you don't want to be above what others in the industry are selling things for because you're not going to make the sale. You're going to lose money. And you don't want to be too low because then you're leaving money on the table and you know, who wants to do that? So really what you want to do is look at your production costs, look at what things are selling for and know that that's kind of your barriers of your boundaries of top and bottom. And then from there, you need to, I don't like, and you may have a different opinion on this, but I don't like to use, what are they called? Like pricing calculators. I don't like to say, okay, your production costs are $5. So now you need to 3x that to get to your wholesale account, your price. I kind of like to look at, this is what the market will bear for this type of product. Your wholesale is going to be at least half of that. And then look at how that corresponds to your production costs. So let's hypothetically look at that book for $40. And if it's retailing for $40, A store is going to buy it for 20 approximately if they're going to keystone it. Keystoning means that you double the wholesale price to get to the retail price. But
and I have to say, here in Australia, there are very 40% is the, I say 40%. So in terms of doubling it, that is what every retailer wants. They might take slightly less. So instead of a 50% margin, they might take 40. But if you can't give them that, you are automatically moving down the list of products for them to stock.
Yep. Absolutely. And some retailers in the States will mark up even more than 50% because they have maybe higher overhead or whatever it is. And the important thing to remember is you will set the wholesale price, but the retail stores, once they purchase your merchandise, they will decide what that retail price is. But you have a general idea based upon what the wholesale price is and general keystoning terms. But so that $40 book would realistically be wholesale for about 20, and you need to look, can you produce that? And do you make a good enough margin at $20 to wholesale that? And one thing I go over with clients too is not everything you sell needs to be sold to both the retail and the wholesale market if you're selling to both channels. And if you are selling a high-priced item and you cannot get that margin to where it needs to be for you to sell it wholesale, then just sell it to your retail customers and sell other things that have a better margin for you to your wholesale customers.
Yeah, that is so true. And I was going to say, you also, back to your pricing, say we've got our $20 diary, and you go, okay, it costs me $15 in labor and production costs, all those sorts of things.
Yeah.
You have to choose whether you're happy with $5 because one of the things you have to look forward with is maybe that number will come down when you get some economies of scale. When you get volume, you can buy more stock in and get a discount there, a volume discount on your hard costs. Maybe you can hire somebody in and you can become more efficient. So you might say, okay, at this point in time, I'm okay with $5 because I know I can get that to 10 once I get to 20,000 units a year.
Yep. The other thing is, with a brand new product, I like to start small in terms of how I'm manufacturing it. So as you mentioned, as you get the economy of scales, you start to produce a higher volume, your production costs are going to go down. But I know when I'm launching a brand new product, I'm okay not getting huge margins on that because I'm kind of testing the market. And I'm trying to see if people are going to be into it, if they're going to buy it. And, with the understanding that, if it's popular, we'll manufacture and I won't be changing the price, but I will be manufacturing at a larger volume and that will get that production cost down and therefore increase my profit margin.
Okay, so one of the things you touched on before is going out to the market to see what other people's pricing is. So let's talk about the diary. You look around and very, very similar diaries range from $30 to, say, $55. So you're like, okay, the market $40 is kind of in the middle. Why wouldn't you want to go and say, no, mine is premium. Like I have letterpressed the cover and I've used linen paper and all. It's a $95 diary. Why would you not choose the $95 diary first? Because a lot of people are going to be thinking, but everyone says niche, have a product that's different. Why shouldn't you go for the $95 product? Why should you stay in that kind of mid-range and not price yourself above everybody else to begin with?
Well, I think that question will take people back to what their overarching brand is about and what other types of products they have in their collection. If all of their products are higher end and, they do have that, foil stamping, letterpress, all the luxurious stuff, and people are used to seeing higher price goods from them, then they could price that at a higher price point. However, if this is a first run at something, I like to tell people to be conservative at the beginning and not necessarily put all the bells and whistles because you have to think about the cash outlay for all of these things. If it's a really luxe diary, you're going to be spending a lot more to get it out there. And if it's an untested product, that creates a lot more risk for your business. If you're creating something that's a little more mainstream, that's not to say there's less risk. There's less financial risk, but there's about the same risk as when you're asking, are people going to buy this? So I think my feeling on this is that it ties back to your overarching brand and the product collection that you already have. If your brand is higher end and people are used to seeing, higher end products from you, then I think it's okay to go above what the norm is. But I do think you need to be educated and do your homework and find out, what the market will bear for certain types of products, because some things very much have an industry standard. There's some product categories that buyers just, this is what it is, and that's what, that's all you can do. But there's other product categories where it's a little bit more open to interpretation, or the style, things like jewelry, that can vary greatly as to what a necklace would cost. But greeting cards are very standardized, for example.
I was going to say, back to your greeting card, like here in Australia, you can get your $1 greeting cards. Your average greeting card in a store is probably $6 or $7. And then if you go to a boutique, you might pay up to $10, maybe $11. But anything over that, it's got to be something super bloody awesome.
Right.
You have to have one heck of a point of difference to be selling a greeting card in Australia over that $10 range.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's high here too. Yeah.
All right.
But I think it does go back to your overall line. If your customer is expecting high-end goods from you, then you can fit into that high-end good thing, niche. If you don't have a following that's already used to seeing high-end products, it's going to look out of place for them. They're going to question the pricing, and they're going to question the value. Even if you explain to them all of the bells and whistles and why it's higher priced, I think they would have a hard time mentally, the psychological aspect of buying it.
Yeah, that is so true. So now that we have an idea of what we're going to sell it for, you talked about production capacity. Do you see a lot of people who say, yay, I'm prepared to fork out my several $1,000s to go to the trade show, and then back to that example that I said earlier, they go, but I don't actually have the stock. I'm just going to take the orders, and then I'm going to go and make the stock.
Yeah, this is a question for a lot of new businesses that are starting to get into trade shows. And I am of the belief that if you are going to be selling wholesale and doing shows, that you need to start to build up your inventory. Now, I'm also realistic and practical in that you don't want to fork out a bunch of money until you know that you've got the sales. So I can give you an example from one of my first shows. I did not have everything produced and ready and in stock, but what I did do before I went to the show is I ran samples with the printer I was going to be using, so that the quality was the same as what the buyers would be getting from me. And then I took those samples and I sold through those samples, but I also had all the art files ready to go. So we, at the show, when we saw what cards were selling, we sent those print orders directly to our printer from New York. And so it gave us a couple of days jump start than if we'd waited and gone home and started that process. Now, I was outsourcing my printing. If you are creating your own products by hand, that's a totally different ballgame. And really, it would boil down to having a conversation with buyers and setting expectations as to when the product will be ready. But I will say, if you are going to do one of these shows, and if you are planning on making wholesale a large part of your business, then you should have inventory on hand ready to go, or work up to it. Find ways that you can create that product quickly to fill orders quickly. If buyers have to wait for a long time, which you can speak to this, they get less excited about it.
You lose the sale.
Yeah, you lose interest, or they lose interest, rather.
And you have to appreciate from their point of view, if they're in a trade show with potentially 2,000 potential vendors, then if you have a product that you tell them it's going to be an 8-week lead time, and they go down the track and they find someone else who has a very similar product who says, I can send it out to you next week, as soon as we get back from the show, they're probably going to give the order to someone else, because they don't want to be waiting. There's already, I don't know about in America, but here in Australia, there's already this big lag after the show, because people travel quite a long distance, and by the time they get back to their offices and they've entered all the orders into the computer and they've sent it to their warehouse or whatever, it can sometimes be 3 or 4 weeks before you get your product. But the hype is in the moment. People are buying, and to be honest, I used to like to have that stuff in my store the next week. If someone said to me, we'll get it out to you, we'll ship this order to our warehouse right now, you'll have it before you even get back. For me, that's the excitement, because I was saying to my customers, I was on social media going, hey, I'm at the trade fair. How cute is this? Use the poll feature. Do you like this one or this one? Which one would you prefer to see? And you've built that excitement with your customer. Then you've got to wait another 6 weeks for the actual product to turn up. And the excitement, they're kind of like, well, you showed us that. Okay, it's here now, but we saw that 6 weeks ago.
Right. Now it feels stale, right? To them, at least, to some of them that have seen it already. Yeah. I I always tell our alumni that before they go to the show, they need to have a clear idea of when they'll start shipping orders, because you want to tell all the buyers, like, all show orders will ship by this date if they're ASAP orders. The shorter that timeline is, the better, but you also want to create a buffer in there so that you're not overextending yourself. Though I think it's much worse to tell somebody, oh, I can get it out to you next week, and then it's 3 weeks later that you're actually sending it. You do want to manage those expectations, but you want to be realistic as well.
You do. And you mentioned terms and conditions right at the beginning. Where do you see people fall down here?
A lot of people don't understand why they need to have a minimum opening order requirement and why that order number is different than reorders. So minimum opening order is for brand new stores that have never worked with you, and that's a dollar amount that they have to spend. And then a reorder amount is somebody that's ordered from you previously, and it's a little bit of a lower price point threshold that they have to meet. But setting those minimum orders, it's really important. One, it shows professionalism on your part that you know what you're doing. Just by having them alone, it helps. But two, it makes it worthwhile. Well, a couple things. It makes it worthwhile for you to fill the order. You don't want to be filling, $10 wholesale orders. That's not worth your time and energy. But it also makes sure that the buyer has enough of your product to merchandise it on the shelves well. And if, they only buy 2 or 3 things, it might make your products look kind of sad on the shelves rather than a whole collection that people can choose from. So
because no one buys the last one. It is a retail phenomenon. If there is one on the shelf, nobody buys it.
Right. So those are 2 things people say, well, why do I need this? I'll take any order. I'm excited about any order. That's the other thing I will say. That people get so excited, and I am guilty of this too. So when I say people, I hope it doesn't come off as judgmental, because I went through this too, where buyers came up to me and they were like, I really love this card and I would love to have it in blue instead of green. Can you do that for me? And I would want to say, yes, I will totally do that for you. But realistically, no, you can't do that for everyone that comes in. That creates a custom order, and that's very different than your wholesale orders. And you
did say yes the first few times though, didn't you?
Oh yes, I did. And then I kicked myself about it later, because I'm thinking, oh my gosh, now I'm having to run a special job just for this customer, and they're ordering 6 cards and I have to order 20. It did not make sense. So, but you get excited especially when you're at these shows and people are coming up to you and there's opportunities to talk to your customers and they're showing interest in your work, and, they want to collaborate and buy from you. And it's a really exciting time, and you want to say yes to everything. But I want to encourage you to say, well, let's talk about that after the show and let's see if we can make that work. You don't want to make those types of decisions on the show floor, in my opinion.
No, and that is a whole different opportunity, isn't it? That's for you going back to them and saying, if you want that, we can make it a custom order. It will be exclusive to your store. This is how much it's going to cost.
Yep. And you can turn it around, just as you said, to make it really special and exciting for them. And again, worth your time to do it as well.
Yeah. So now we are aware of how much we're going to sell for. We know how much product we need, how much we're going to need. We've got all the production side set up, even if it hasn't gone, we haven't pressed the go button yet.
Right.
Now, what do we do? Because let's be honest, a trade show is probably going to cost you somewhere between, in Australia, $1,800 to $2,500 for a small booth. Mm-hmm. And they just skyrocket from there. It's anything up to $20,000 or $30,000 for a large booth.
Yeah, on average, our alumni for New York shows, a stationery show in New York now, they tend to spend $8,000 to $10,000. That's the average that's for the booth itself, for any marketing tied to the show, and also travel and lodging. That does not include any production, because I believe that should be lumped into your general cost of doing business. But yeah, these shows they're not cheap. They're very much an investment in time and money. And so you want to be serious about what you're doing before you jump in.
And this is where people get a little bit, I'm going to say, stingy in terms of stock, because they think, I have so much on the line here. I can't afford that $20,000 worth of stock as well. So there is a reason, like you were saying earlier. But I have to ask you, what is your opinion on small retailers, smaller creatives who are forking out all this money for, wait for it, brand awareness? I love that you laughed at that.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I tell every single person that attends one of my conferences. Doing a trade show is the success of your trade show should not solely be measured by the number of sales that you have at that specific show. Now, let me dive into this a little bit deeper. The connections you make at the show and the brand awareness that you speak of, yes, that is important. But really what's important is the connections, the relationships that you're building that will lead to sales down the road. I had somebody come by my booth for 4 straight years before he finally ordered from me. And when he did, it was a substantial order and it was worth the wait. But if I had given up on him in that first show or I'd given up the shows altogether, I wouldn't have gotten that order. And that's not to say you should continue to do shows on the hopes of somebody ordering 4 years from now. But my point is, yes, it's a marketing tool and it will give you brand awareness and get your, more eyes on your product, but that should not be the only reason you do the shows. Just like I would tell you, if you had low sales at a show, that shouldn't discourage you from doing more shows, because the key to these shows is face-to-face relationships, building those relationships with buyers, connecting with others in your industry, connecting with press, connecting with sales reps. It's about the relationships. And I will say too that the follow-up after shows is so critical, because a lot of people will place orders following a show once they've gotten home and looked through all their catalogs and sorted out their budget and things like that. Some buyers, as you can probably attest to, are very organized and they go into the show knowing what they want to order, and some go to peruse, collect catalogs, then they place their orders after the show. So to your point about brand awareness, I think it's a benefit to doing the show, but it should not be your sole reason for doing a show.
My clients laugh at me because I always say, you are not Nike. You can't afford a brand awareness campaign. You can afford a sales campaign.
Yeah.
And the follow-up is where it's at. If you do have the less sales than you were hoping for, you have to get on the phone. You have to be, to me, it's getting on the phone. It's not even sending emails, because 2,000 vendors at that trade show are probably all going to be sending emails to the people who came. So there's a good chance that they're going to end up with 500, 600, 700 emails in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Pick up the damn phone and
Yes.
calls, which you have to have that strategy beforehand, don't you? You have to go, my goal is to get somebody's phone number, to get the person who can do the purchase order to give me their phone number.
Yeah. So when I work with my people, we build a pre-show marketing strategy. We talk about what they should be doing at the show if they're able to, in terms of social media and stuff like that. And then we build out a post-show marketing strategy. And honestly, it's a tiered approach that it's kind of mirrored backwards. What you do on the front end, you do on the back end, but in different ways. And I'm a big believer in hitting people over the head via email, via snail mail, call if you need to. But one thing I wanted to mention that helps to make the follow-up so much more impactful is, while you're at the show, take notes. So never give out a catalog unless you get a business card, because it's just the currency exchange it shows. Mm-hmm. But get that business card, and on the back of the business card, write notes after the person has left your booth. What were they interested in? Which products? What were they wearing? Did they have interesting glasses on? Did you have a conversation about where they live? Like, some of those smaller details that have nothing to do with your products are going to make you memorable when you follow up with them. For example, if you like their glasses and they tell you where they got them, you could say in the email, thanks again for that recommendation for the glasses. I looked into them and I found the perfect pair. And I knew you were looking at these products, and you could go on with your pitch. But by talking about the glasses, which you talked about in the booth, that's triggering their memory as to who you are. Because again, they're meeting so many people at these shows. So writing down some of those, more personal details about them and things that you spoke about other than your products will help to jog their memory about who you are.
That is one of my little secret weapons, and you just gave it away.
Sorry.
That's okay. No, that is one of the things I say is find something. And I do think it tends to be either something they wore, or piece of jewelry, just something, because you can make, but it has to be something you're interested in. And it is one of the keys that I always say when someone comes into your store, that you should greet them and find something about them that you're attracted to. And it could be, wow, you don't even have to like it. That necklace looks fantastic on you. Where did you get it from?
Yeah.
And that is just the connection. That's the thing where all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm a real person.
Yep. Well, and it's interesting too, if you've ever stood in a trade show booth and, watched people walk the aisles, people have this like, they have this face about them. They're either like, they don't want to come too close because they're worried you're going to like jump out at them and like attack them, or like they're afraid to kind of make that connection with you. They just want to kind of roam and see what they like. And if they're comfortable, they'll step into the booth. And that's where I'll usually just, I agree, greet them, show that you're warm and welcoming, but you're not going to attack them with sales, sales information. And I usually just let people wander. And after they've been there for, 30 seconds, a minute, I say, can I help you with anything? Or is there anything specific you're looking for this show? And I will tell you too, if they're coming to my booth and they say, I'm looking for gift wrap, and let's say I don't have gift wrap, I will direct them to one of my colleagues that I know that has wonderful gift wrap, because I want them to find what they need. And I also want them to think of me as somebody that's helpful to them. And if I don't have it, I'm okay sending them to a competitor, because, that's what we do to build relationships and to help people. And sure enough, everyone I sent away did order from me too. But they're always surprised when you treat, other exhibitors like community rather than the competition.
Definitely. And you have to do it. You don't get anything out of being, a spiteful business owner.
Right. Of course not. Yeah.
I always say there will always be more money and more customers. When you live in that scarcity, no, this customer's mine, the universe, yes, we get all woo-woo. The universe is like, you're a greedy business owner. I'm not sending anybody your way.
Yeah. And again, I just want to be helpful. I want to help people get what they're looking for and find what they're getting for. And if I'm not able to offer that to them, well, let me help you. If I know somebody off the top of my head, I'm going to send you their way.
Okay. So I have a couple of more questions. One is, do you think it is okay to share a booth with somebody else?
Oh, yeah. I think this is a great option for people that are just starting out. I would caution against sharing a booth with too many people, because I think that buyers find that confusing. If you are sharing a booth, I recommend separate branding, your logo on separate walls, and having kind of a clear division of, okay, these are my products, these are their products, not having it intermixed like a retail shop would be. But I think it's a great option for somebody that's just starting out at a show, that's trying to keep their costs down, that, the other benefit to it too is, one, it's more fun to have somebody there. And two, hopefully they can sell your products and you can sell theirs too. So you can kind of cross promote each other's stuff. But I do think that that's a great way to get your feet wet.
And the good thing about that, I guess, is if you choose a complementary product, then people are more likely to buy both.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. I do think you want to be careful about who you choose to share a booth with. You don't want it to be competing. You do want it to be complementary. You do want it to, even though you want to make it a clear distinction that it's two separate brands, you do want a buyer to be comfortable walking in and not thinking it's two completely disconnected brands, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because visually as they walk past, subconsciously, if what you're selling isn't cohesive, their brain just goes, that's just too hard. I don't know what's going on there. It's just too hard.
Too much.
Yeah, I've had that face as I walk through the the third day of the trade show.
Oh yeah, you're exhausted. We're exhausted. I know. I hear you.
All right, now I did a little video when I was at one of the Australian gift fairs, and it was a little impromptu one, just to kind of look. I was being a little bit snarky, and I was trying to prove a point. And I interviewed 12 vendors and said, I'm here to buy something. What are you going to offer me so that I will buy today? And I can tell you, of those 12 people we videoed, 10 of them said, well, here's my stand. What did you want to buy?
Yeah, right.
One lady went, right, well, and she was selling candles, and she said, as of right now, if you order 5 fragrances, we'll give you a box of the 6th one free. And I was like, you are a smart lady. And then one more store said, if you order more than $500, we're doing free shipping. Mm-hmm. So what is your take on having an offer at the show?
Okay, I love this question. Thank you for asking it. Because I do think there's a lot of exhibitors that are not prepared for this kind of thing. And so I think most buyers prefer free shipping. And if you're going to go that route, I recommend you have a high opening order for the show for that, just because free shipping tends to add up pretty quickly for you. And it's a big chunk out of your Your profit margin. I am a much bigger fan of getting more of your product on the shelves of their store. So the example you gave about the candle with, buy 5, get the 6th one free, that is what I usually counsel my clients to do, because again, it's getting more product on their shelves, and the cost out of my pocket as a manufacturer is much less for that one item rather than shipping the whole order, especially things like candles. That gets really heavy really fast and really expensive. But I love the free product with purchase if you order a certain amount. Yeah, but again, with all of those, I recommend having a certain threshold, like a dollar threshold that they have to meet to get those.
Yeah, I just find that a lot of people who walk away from trade shows saying that they didn't get the sales they wanted, they're the people who didn't have an offer that makes me buy today. And to me, as a consumer, as someone who's bought for several retail stores in one go, if I'm going to buy today, you've got to make it worth my while.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I'll just walk around and get 20 different candle people, and then I'll come back and I'll work out which one I might like.
What is your take as a buyer on people that offer their show specials outside of people at the show? For example, if they say, well, if you hit $250, we'll give you free shipping. And what if they send that out to their email list during the show, if they place an order, and or as follow-up after the show to people that they met at the show? Does that leave an icky taste in your mouth if you see that?
I am all for a bit of FOMO though. So I counsel my clients who do trade shows to say, offer your trade show special during the trade show to anybody else. So anyone who places orders from the 1st to the 3rd, which is when you're going to be at the trade show, is eligible for this special, because not everybody can fly to a trade show.
Yeah.
So, but then I feel that the offer that you send out post trade show should be less than the offer you offered at or for the trade show. So say, let's go with the candles. Order $500 worth of candles and we'll give you 10 of XYZ fragrance. So that's probably enough for me as a buyer, 10, because if I'm selling them for $30, you've just given me $300 worth of pure profit. So that is enough for me to go, okay, I will buy from you. But maybe post trade show, that might be, we'll give you 3 testers or three of them, because the person who's at the trade show, you wanted their order on the day to make it worth your while. You want to know that when you've left, you've covered your costs, you've made some money, you know how much you need to produce. So if you get into in my opinion, if you get into the habit of offering the same thing for another 2 weeks, there is no impetus for that person to buy from you on the day. So you're just creating the same situation that you were in before.
I agree with you. It's interesting to hear your take as a buyer too, because I've told my audience the same thing of after the show, you should be offering something different. Like the other thing is you don't want to take away the, what's the word? Like the specialness.
The specialness is exactly what I was going to say.
But you don't want to take that away from the people that did make the time and effort to come to the show. You want to give them kind of like a higher offer, a better offer than what you're giving to everybody else. So I do like the post-show special being something different.
Yeah, and I just feel it shouldn't be the same, but it also shouldn't be as valuable, because you wanted someone's dollars on the day. You made them make a hard decision when they had so much to choose from. And the post one is usually just to get the people who couldn't choose. So maybe you do give them an offer, but it's like, but you chose, you missed the opportunity. The opportunity's gone, but I still have an incentive for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like a downsell on the product side.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, we could talk about this for ages.
I know. I've very much enjoyed this so far, so thank you.
That's okay. So probably just one last thing in terms of storage, accommodation, logistics, which I know are 3 very, very different conversations that we could have. But how do your clients deal with, having to travel? Because here in Australia, you pretty much have to fly everywhere unless you're in that state. You have to fly there. So if it's a 3-day trade show, you're looking at 5 days with bump in and bump out, and that's $200 a night for accommodation. You've got probably, let's say, $100 a day for meals. the team that you have to have on, because let's be honest, people, you cannot run a stand on your own.
Yeah,
you can
it's
try,
tough to do it on your own. Yeah.
but you have to go to the bathroom at some point.
Yes, make friends with your neighbors, but even so, I agree. It's hard to do it on your own.
So you're probably adding another $2,000, $3,000 on top of your show costs just to cover you being there, not even anybody else. So how do you counsel your clients to make the most out of that?
Yeah, it's, this is a tough question because everybody's circumstances are so different. And when I say that, how far they're traveling, how many people they want at their booth, the type of product they have, like all of that, everybody's circumstances are different. So I usually encourage people to choose a budget and then work within that budget. And ultimately, it's like planning a wedding or remodeling your home. You got to make some tough decisions about where you want to spend your money and how you want to make your decisions. And so, here's an example. I am in California and I go do the National Stationery Show every year in New York. And I have chosen every year to rent my walls. I use a company called Manny Stone Decorators, and it is more pricey than having my own walls in storage and putting them up every year. But to your point, I don't have to go in 2 days early for setup. I can fly in 1 day early. So I'm not paying for that extra night of hotel or the extra meals or whatever it might be. So some of it ends up kind of going out in the wash. But to me, that's an area I will splurge to have Manny Stone Decorators put up my walls. And when I walk into the show, everything is up and ready for me. Other people might not be willing to spend their money there. They might they'd rather spend it on the extra day's hotel and the travel and the additional hands on deck instead of paying somebody for rented booths that they don't get to keep. It's a personal choice and it's a tough one to make, but ultimately everybody's circumstances are so different. I tell people to set their budget, pick a number, what they're comfortable spending, map out. We have a sample budget that we share with people, and I'd be happy to share it with your audience too. A sample budget of what things cost. And so they can kind of work backwards and see, can I hit that budget? Can I keep things under that number? And if so, great. If not, they're going to have to make some choices and cut back in certain areas to hit that number. I don't know if that answers your question very well, but ultimately
it does, because the budget is the most important part, and that is gold. Like that, I feel like we need to make a tweetable out of that. Create your trade show budget and work backwards from there, because maybe you can do with you're in feet, we're in meters, a slightly smaller booth to save $800.
Right.
What difference will that make to your design layout? And one of my clients just did a trade show recently, and she was in Canada, and I said to her, set the stand up in your office. And she's like, what are you talking about? I went, I want to see the stand. She's like, I'm not doing that. Yeah, you are. So we got on Skype, and I'm like, okay, no, you need to move that. You need to move this. No, that's not in color. She was doing colorways. I was like, no, those colorways don't work. Colorways, heavy colors should be down the bottom. And then we did this, and she was just floored. And I'm not a design person. Like, I am not your creative person, but I get the theory behind it. So I will tell you what to do, but you have to do it.
Yeah. Well, to your point, we tell people all the time, you need to test and you need to test again. And I even tell people, bust out some masking tape and map out the size of your booth exactly as you would have it. If it's 8 feet wide and by 10, whatever your space is, map it out and then start to put your furniture in to see what it would look like, because the space is so important. But I agree with you. Yeah. Once you map out that budget, you can see, oh gosh, I need to cut back here, or maybe I can't get that fancy lighting, or, I wanted to get some really pretty flowers for the booth, but maybe I need to go with something a little smaller now, whatever it is, you're going to have to make some tough decisions and determine what's important for you. But what I will say is you need to remember your reason for being there, and your product is the hero of this booth. I see a lot of people getting carried away with decor and making it pretty and all that. You want to make your product the hero. So if that means you need better lighting so people can see your product well and see the texture and style or whatever it is, get the better lighting. Don't go with the extra flowers. Focus on making the product really shine and stand out in your booth.
Do you make your clients create a profit goal?
That's a good question. I do tell them to set goals in profit is one of them, but I tell them to set other goals too. How many, catalogs do you want to give out? How many business cards do you want to get? How many sales reps or press do you want to meet? Like, I really try to make it a more cumulative type of thing. But I don't actually say to them, what's your profit number? What's your, what are you hoping to get here? But I probably should.
I don't know. For me, it was always, we used to, because I've been on both sides. I've done the retailers are buying, but here's a little trick for you guys. If you are a retailer and maybe you have a small little line that you're creating yourselves, or maybe you just have a physical shop front and you want to get in front of, so let me just preface, these were consumer trade shows, not to B2B. And so my suppliers would pay me to run their stands for them, with the bonus of I could tell people about my store and they were paying me to be on the stand at the same time. Hello, win-win, anyone? Because they knew for them, it was like someone who knew their product inside out. They knew they could trust us. They knew that we had great design, not me, my team. They knew that the booth would be great, that everything was going to be safe, everything would be shipped back. So we were getting paid to spruik a product, but also to say, and if you don't buy today, our store's just down the road. You can come and get it from us. So that is, in terms of sharing a booth, that's another way of looking at sharing. But if you're a product manufacturer and you can't get to the show, so we were talking about how can you cut back your budget. I'm just looking at that same trade show from the manufacturer side from their manufacturer side is, whilst they were paying us to be there, they were still running their business. They were still putting out orders. They were doing all the things they need to do. So if you can't be there, maybe it would be cheaper for one of your retailers to come and man the stand for you and take your orders. Just something a little bit different. I'd like to think a little bit outside the box.
No, I like that idea. That's an interesting concept. We've also had alumni that their independent reps came and worked a day or so in the booth as well.
Yeah, and customers. Oh my goodness. Customers working on your booth, the best thing is they work for product generally or store credit or some sort of credit. And they love your product. So, I mean, that's a bit B2C, but B2B is, can you get a rep in to do it for you? Can you get one of your retailers to come in and do it for you? Because, man, you're not going to be spending $3,000 or $4,000 on accommodation costs if you can get them to do it. The benefit of them is they can spruik their store, but they also love your product.
Yeah. Well, and too, it's always easier for other people to brag about your talents and products than it is for you to stand there and talk about your own sometimes.
Always. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up now because we've been talking for an hour and we could probably talk for another 5. I have to ask you, what is your favorite store?
Oof, that's like asking me to choose my favorite child. I'm a huge fan of working with independent retail shops. And one of my favorite shops was one in San Diego. Actually, when you're in San Diego, you should go. It's called Sweet Paper. It's in La Jolla. And it was a really great shop that was very kind to me as I was growing my business and helping to provide feedback. And even so, as I grew Bootcamp, they came to speak to our audience about retailer perspectives and things like that. So they've been, Julie and Teresa are amazing down there, and it's a great little shop.
Why do you love it so much? Other than the support that you got from them, what as a customer do you love about the store?
Sure. It's just beautifully created product, and it's not just paper goods. They have office supplies and things for both men and women. I found some great gifts for my husband when I was there last. So yeah, it's just got a lot of different product, but it's merchandised really well together. So there were some surprises and delights in there that I was not expecting.
And this is the thing. If people have listened to the podcast before, they know that it's always a running joke. Sal cannot merchandise. My team, I used to try. As I said, I get the theory, putting it in practice, not my forte. And I used to get notes from the team in boxes when they arrived saying, please leave this, I'll do it tomorrow. Oh. So merchandising is something that if you can't do it, you pay someone to do it because it is going to sell your product. And for me, with a trade show booth, it is exactly the same. If you are as handy at merchandising as I am, it is worth your money spending a couple of $100s to get somebody to come in and make it look awesome.
100%. To that point, I would also say that extends to things like product photography and creating your catalog and even, your website and branding if you need. All of those pieces play into people's decision whether or not to buy from you, especially if they're virtual, not right in front of you at a show. But I'm a firm believer, if you are weak in an area, hire somebody to help you if you can, or get the help you need in some other way, whether it's bartering or, some sort of trade of some sort.
Okay. Again, we could keep talking here, but I'm going to stop because we will just keep going on and on and on. Tradeshow Bootcamp sounds awesome. So if people, and I know that you do an in-person workshop as well, don't you?
I do. Yeah, we do. Our Paper Camp conference is once a year. It's usually twice a year. This year we're doing it once, and then we have an online version as well. And then we've got a number of business classes as well that teach manufacturers how to run just smarter business, how to streamline things and scale up. And, as we hit different milestones in our companies, we hit different hurdles. And so we've started to create some new products for the more advanced manufacturers as well.
And where can we find those?
Sure. Everything is at tradeshowcamp.com, or you can listen to our podcast at prooftoproduct.com.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I've had so much fun, and it's been really good just kind of getting my ideas out there, getting your feedback. We don't necessarily have to agree on everything, but some of the things you've said today, I'm like, yes, I can share that with my clients, and they are going to be able to put that into practice straight away. So thank you so very much.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. You can find all of the show notes over at selenaknight.com. If you found something that you heard today particularly useful, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes or Stitcher. And of course, feel free to share this episode with someone that you think could benefit by listening to it. Want more retail biz strategies? You can watch the Bringing Business to Retail TV show, where each week I'll answer a question or provide you with a simple, actionable retail biz strategy that you can implement in your business right away. If you have a question or a guest, I'd love to hear from you. Drop my team an email at podcast@selenaknight.com, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a great week.